What's going on, everybody? Hopping on real quick. I want to talk about a subject that I think is really interesting, something that probably touches most people's lives in one way or another, and that's the issue of spiritual covering. I'm a network leader, and the position of being a network leader means that there are leaders of churches, leaders of ministries who connect to me for spiritual covering. But what I'm finding is that in a lot of these spaces, there's not a bunch of conversation about what spiritual covering is. And one of the most detrimental things that can happen to a relationship is for people to have expectations that are not met. And one of the main reasons why expectations are not met is because there's not communication. So sometimes on one end, people feel entitled to something that someone does not feel obligated to give. And somewhere in the middle of that, an offense can be generated that really eats away at the relationship. And so I think that when we talk about spiritual covering, that there just has to really be open dialogue about what the expectations are on both sides of that fence. I think that from an organizational standpoint, that spiritual coverings need to take the opportunity to teach the office of being a spiritual covering. When I say office, I just mean a post in a position that includes administration and governance. I'm not creating another fivefold office, but I'm just using that term to explain what that is really all about. It's a post, it's a position, it administrates, it oversees, it governs, it organizes. All of those things are germane to an office. And so I think spiritual coverings need to talk about that. As a spiritual covering, one of the things that your covering provides for you is first and foremost, it's spiritual prayer covering. It means that these people are before the Lord on your behalf. And one of the things that makes a spiritual coverings intercession and prayer different from just other people that may be praying from you is really the posture, because you are accountable to a spiritual covering and you have given them a position in your life where they should be able to speak into your life. They should be able to bring correction into your life. They should be able to bring guidance and wisdom to just about anything that you would experience in your life, in your ministry, or in the areas that you have given them access into. And so their intercession carries with it another weight and another responsibility, because they're not just praying out of a devotional sense or obligation, but they are praying because they have a responsibility to furnish what is needed to help you do what it is that you're called to do. I believe that principle really is displayed in Psalms 133:1, where it talks about the progression of the anointing, how it starts on headship, it goes to the beard, which is leadership, and then the skirt, which is fellowship. And so in a house, and every spiritual covering has a house, and that house can be a local church. It can include a national or international body. All of those things are comprised in that leader's house, and that flow of anointing is there from the headship and the governance of that leader throughout the entirety of that house. So when you connect with that covering, you connect with that leader, you now become a part of the dispensation of heaven for that leader and for that house. It should enhance everything that you're already called and anointed to do. It should aggrandize it. It should be a benefit to you. It should increase it. It should give you a thrust and momentum and breakthrough, all of those things that the principle that God has given us in multiplication, it accomplishes that. One can only chase 1,000, but two can put 10,000 to flight. Well, keep multiplying and add up the numbers that are connected to an organizational thrust. That's how much impact you get to have, because you are in agreement and in covenant and in connection with the covering. I think everybody, especially pastors, they need a pastor. You need somebody. And this is, it's scary to say in this generation, because most people probably don't feel like this, but you need somebody who could tell you to go sit down. I know you're the set man, and I know you're the set woman, and I know, people line up at attention when you walk in the room, but I think even you need somebody to tell you to sit down, to fix that, to correct that. What you just taught was erroneous. what you just did was out of sort or out of character. I think that you should have somebody that from your heart you are submitted to. And I'm emphasizing from the heart, and I'm emphasizing submission, because submission is not submission until you don't want to submit. It does not become submission until there is a conflict between your will and the will of the person you're submitting to, and you choose to come under the subjection to their will. That's submission. Anything else is not submission. I don't care what you call it. It's not submission. And so I believe every leader needs to have somebody they're submitted to. That's very clearly displayed in the parable of the centurion. Jesus said, I have not even seen this kind of faith before in Israel. This man understood authority. He said, you don't got to come and heal my servant. You don't have to move out of your space. He said, I'm a man of authority. I understand how it works. I have people that are under my authority. I say to this one, go, and he goes. I say to this one, come, and he comes. He said, I recognize your rank. Jesus looked at his discernment and awareness of authority and rank as being faith. He called it faith. I've not seen this kind of faith before in Israel. And so as we're moving into increasing measures of kingdom dynamics, it means we're going to understand more of God's sovereignty. We're going to understand more of his governance. We're going to understand more of his government. And we're going to understand more about the system of the kingdom that he has established in the earth, which includes the ecclesia. It includes his nation. It includes his very elect. And we're going to understand where we fit in that, how we are to be positioned in it, who we submit to, who submits to us, how we get to move forward as a unit in God. So spiritual coverings are a blessing and a benefit. I'm grateful for the spiritual covering that I have. I just think that whenever there's an issue between you and a covering, more than likely it's you. It's not the covering. You need the covering more than the covering needs you. And so you got to figure out how you got to get into alignment, how you have to reset, reconsider. Doesn't mean that you won't have grievances. Doesn't mean that you won't have things that need to be heard out. But you got to do that from a posture of humility, recognizing that the anointing still flows from the head down, recognizing that there are people that are beyond you in God. People that are beyond you in the things of the Spirit, people that are beyond you in experience, that when you're submitted to them and you're postured under them, it means that you're getting the overflow of what's on them because you need it. You need what they have in excess. What they can allow to flow off of them, you need to even get to the next level. That's the proper dynamic and the proper perspective to have. A spiritual covering is not going to be your best friend. They're not going to be the people you get to get on the phone with and just chop it up. Should your spiritual covering be accessible? Yes, but within reason. Because familiarity breeds contempt. You can't always just pick up the phone and call your covering. I can't do that. If I have to talk to my pastor, I got to schedule a meeting for my pastor. I gotta call his administrator and I got to see if I could get on his schedule, and sometimes I can text him and we can set it up ourselves, but I respect the processes that he has in place. There are times when I can talk to Bishop Bismarck, who's also our covering. He's our apostolic father, the father of the organization. But if I had a dire situation, I'm not just going to send him a text message or a phone call and hope that he has the availability to get back to me. If it's a dire situation where me as a spiritual leader, I need my spiritual leaders, then I'm going to set up that appointment and I'm going to have a pertinent conversation. Sometimes people compare experiences with other people. If you are a part of a network or an organization, and you have a spiritual father or a spiritual mother who is the head of that organization and they are your covering, that is not the same dynamic as you being a sheep having a pastor in a church. It's not the same as being with that person week after week, service after service, calling that person your father, mother, or calling that person your pastor and spiritual covering. When you are being covered by someone who's leading an organization, the dynamic is different. And so you have to have a different level of expectation. You can't feel slighted because you got to book an appointment to talk to your covering who's the head of an organization. They're not your pastor in the sense of you can just run into the office on your way into service on Bible study night and say, hey, to your pastor, I got an issue before you get into service. That dynamic is not the same. And so sometimes people will compare their experiences with spiritual covering. They'll be like, well, my spiritual covering was there for me every time I needed them. But you were also serving as a deacon. in that church, in that covering's church. You were always there, and that covering relied on you in the same way. When you have a covering who is the head of an organization, it's not the same dynamic. And so your expectation for access should be different. I believe that people should tithe into their spiritual coverings. They should tithe into their spiritual covering. I do. It's on auto pay. It's on auto tithe into Tudor Bismarck Ministries. It's been that way for all of the years that he's been my covering, because I believe that you need to tithe into your covering. How do you think that you have the right of access to get your problem solved, to get counseling for you, to get counseling for your ministry, to get counseling for your leaders, to get counseling for your family situations and things like that, and there's no reciprocity? A good covering might not even require it. They're going to serve you out of the purity of their heart and their motives concerning you. But you should have an understanding that there's a law of exchange. You think you should be able to call them and get them right on the phone, and you haven't tithed into them, you haven't sown into them, you haven't sowed a seed, you haven't given an offering, you haven't made a pledge. Those are things that we have to really consider, because if we don't, then it becomes excessive and it becomes abusive. And unfortunately, the covering is the one who's at the brunt of that abuse, because they're going to give out, they're going to pour out, they're going to release, they're going to speak into your life, they're going to war for your life. They do it all the time anyway. You ought to feel obligated to sow into them. I don't understand that dynamic of people who think that they should just be takers and never givers. Give into what you're taking from. The seed of honor is the greatest seed that you can sow. Do you know how honored a covering feels when you say, here's this offering, and it's not because I'm inviting you to preach, it's because of who you are in my life? Imagine the honor that you place on them, and the grace that will flow from their heart towards you simply because you honored them. It's more than a word. It's an action. And so we have built a culture of honor in our house where people honor leaders. I teach them not only to honor me, but to honor the other delegated authorities in our house. You honor the elders, you honor the prophets, you honor those that serve in ministry, you honor the ministry technicians, the people who escort you to your seat and give you your envelopes and things. You honor those people by how you treat them, more than just saying it, And so I just really feel that these are conversations that we need to have. The door needs to be open. Organizations need to build systems of accountability where people really understand what's expected of them. And then if you're a part of the organization, you ought to fulfill the obligation and what's expected of you. There's just no other way to look at it. There's no other way for that to be. And so I'm ecstatic about where we are in the kingdom. There's such a powerful and profound sound of war, but it's a sound of victory that I've been hearing. And I don't focus as much on the opposition, because opposition is always going to be there until the return of Christ. But I'm focused on the victory, and I'm finding out that my life is more victorious the more I look at what God has done for us and what he's doing in and through us. The better I feel about what's going on, because I begin to see things from his perspective. And so he's bringing things into alignment. And that's all I'm going to say. That's the end of this post. But he's bringing it into alignment. He's bringing it into order. And as we are shifting and repositioning and posturing ourselves for this order, we are going to see such exponential increase and breakthrough and mobility and momentum. It's going to be such a significant thrust that's going to move our enterprises and our exploits forward. And so get in alignment. Find you a good spiritual covering. You won't find a perfect one. So if that's what your criteria is, you might as well stop looking and do something else. But find somebody whose heart is pure towards you, pure towards the Lord and the commission that God has given them, who has the real grace and anointing from God to fulfill what God has called them to do. It's not just a calling, it's moved into being chosen, and they're able to execute with precision that mandate and that commission. Find somebody that has integrity and purity of heart and purpose. Find somebody whose family life is intact and in order, who knows how to shepherd and lead the flocks of God that have been entrusted to their hand, that's right up in their face before you attach your flock from another place to them. Find someone who is a template and prototype for what it is that you have been called to do. Many times you'll find in your covering that they're moving in a harvest season of what you have in seed form, and so they have the ability to pull you into a dimension, pull you into a place that they've already been. Find somebody that's gonna love you and love you through all of your mountaintops and valleys, that's going to speak to you with equal dexterity in both seasons, who's not just looking for your greatness, but who's looking for the things in you that are yet to be formed into greatness. Find that person, find those people, find that community and tribe of believers. And I guarantee you, if you connect and submit from your heart, you will see an exponential increase in everything that you've been called to do. And you'll see God favor you, and you'll see him move like really profoundly on your behalf. It'll be significant. It will be heavenly. It will be God's purpose and manifestation. God bless until I see you again.